respectable, but it's a wild guess. But it's not a crazy figure. So what has happened? Let's move on to the next slide, to the wealth of the country since then. Here we have some figures that come out pretty regularly. Well, they do come out regularly, where the Federal Reserve estimates the net household worth of people in the United States, all the households in the United States. And you can look these up, and you'll see that there's 30 trillion of stocks, and I think maybe single-family homes. There's 82 million or so owner-occupied single families, and maybe 45 million rental apartments, and so on. So you start adding all these up, and the Federal Reserve tells us, and I invite you to look at the data. It's kind of interesting that we now, in the United States, 231 years later, we have 100 trillion. We have more than 100 trillion of household wealth, even though the stock market's gone down somewhat since the last quarterly report. You say, well, we've had a lot of inflation and everything. We actually, in the United States, for the first half of our existence, roughly, we didn't really have that much inflation. We had inflationary periods and deflationary periods, but the general price level did not change that dramatically. But I will assume again for this calculation that there's been 20-for-1 inflation. It's way less than that in many commodities, but it's very hard to measure and talk about equivalent benefits from different kinds of products and so on, and costs. But I think it's reasonable to say that the United States, in real terms, has increased in wealth. That's something in the area of 5,000 for one, which is really, it's mind-blowing. 5,000 for one in real terms in a country that had 0.5% and a bunch of raw land. But a vision that to accomplish that in 231 years, there's just no denying that's beyond what anybody could have dreamt earlier. But it was not done, and this is important, because we've now hit a bump in the road. It was not done without some very, very serious bumps in the road. It was not 231 years of steady progress. And matter of fact, in this birth of this country, we'd been, into it 72 years. And if we go to the next slide, 1861, we now had about 31 million people. With the 1960 census showed around 31 million people or thereabouts in the country, and 4 million of them were slaves, and we had never really resolved the very much unfinished business of what was involved in compromises in 1789, and we'll have more to say about that later. But we had something that not too many countries experienced, and if you told people in 1789 that in 72 years you were going to have a division that caused the President of the United States at Gettysburg to say that testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and dedicated can long endure. Imagine the President of the United States wondering aloud whether the country that he was presiding over could long endure. Only 72 years, or 74 years at Gettysburg, had taken place. So while this marvelous dream was being played out, roughly a third of the way through it, we faced this really moment of decision, and we